So the most intriguing part about understanding Kata for me was the opportunity to really engage people in their work, in the things that are important to them, and engaging their minds into making their processes better. If you study Mike Rother's texts on Kata, you'll see IK and CK both referenced quite a bit. IK strictly means the improvement kata, and CK is the coaching kata. I would tell anybody, I tell everybody that generally my largest interest and my largest area of practice has been on the coaching kata side. Within GKN, we refer to that as a good portion of our leadership standard work, and it's really a way to engage people and move away from directive management style into a coaching leadership style of management. So a few points about how it helps rewire a person's brain or a team's brain. It starts out as a structured pattern, especially for the beginners who are trying to learn improvement practices. It drills in repetition, and with guidance from a coach that is basically providing some corrective feedback along the way. And really, the learner's satisfaction comes from overcoming obstacles and mastering something. And generally speaking, when we're talking about improving their own work environment, they really take pride in the work that they've done, either individually or as a team, in making their work life a little bit better. I've highlighted areas where the Lean Enterprise triangle, our foundation for our operational excellence, is incorporated within the strategy map at all levels in the 9-panel business model, so that Lean is not just something that one organization or one part of the organization practices. It's not just a manufacturing tool. It's really a business tool for creating continuous improvement throughout GKN. So, within Germantown, there had to be a reason for improvement. Many businesses go on day to day, are performing quite well, and there's no real driving need for massive, continuous, focused improvement. But in Germantown, which is just slightly west of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, there was a definite need and a definite reason. So we started in the journey in 2008. I personally was the third plant manager in 3 years. The staff at Germantown knew me through growing up through the business, so I wasn't an outsider who came in. I was well versed in GKN, that good history of lean tools and lean activities that GKN has provided as a format. Our business, we basically had negative return on sales, so we were losing money at the time. Our overall equipment effectiveness was way below the company standard. Our on-time delivery was poor, such as we actually were on business hold with many customers. We averaged at least one official customer concern per week. We had lost our Q1 status with a customer. Our internal satisfaction for the employees was actually a 2.5 on a scale of 1 to 4, with an internal target of 3. We also had a high fluctuation of staff and management. Over those 3 years, there not just the plant managers coming and going, but also we had various department heads coming and going and incorporating new ideas. And generally speaking, the culture within the Germantown people who've been here a long time was, well, just hang on because it'll change again. So that was really our burning platform for making a change, the need for a change. So when we started our journey in 2008, 2009, really our theme was to get our people engaged and obviously at least get to a break-even profitability target as fast as we could. And we did that through employing lean tools. Generally speaking, that's when we first started our first value stream activities. Mike Rother was co-author of that text, and basically GKN provided great support services and great leadership help to a fairly new team in the plant and helped us align along the value streams. Additionally speaking, quality was a high focus. As you saw on the previous slide, a lot of customer concerns, official concerns. So how do we really engage our quality systems and reduce waste in those areas and make sure we have the right team in place? Additionally speaking, we went through a process of product justification. In 2007, there was a much higher mix of product and product type within the plant. We went through and sorted out the parts that made sense or didn't make sense for the business. And we did make some moves with product to other GKN facilities and kept our customers whole, but many of the products just didn't make sense. In 2010, 2011, the initiatives we're going through, we were trying, this is where the first thoughts about how can we engage the people, everybody, every day. GKN provided employee engagement, basically system that we deployed. We dedicated one Monday a month to the new leadership teams and the skills around leadership. We also rearranged our organization along the Toyota production system, meaning we dedicated one lead per no more than 9 people on the floor so that the right amount of training and coaching could happen. So the Magic Mondays, as they were called, the dedicated time to the leadership, really was about building the skills for those leaders and how their toolbox could be built around leadership standard work. Additionally, through the help of the state of Wisconsin, we did some investment in more quality tools and green and black belt certifications so that we had a deeper understanding of problem solving. So employee engagement and the thought about everybody every day thinking about how they can make their work life better was really the burning question as a lean leader that was driving me to look for a solution that really could duplicate the efforts of coaching that I had grown to learn. How can I duplicate that across my workforce? And how can I get the young leaders to understand, how do you engage your employees in a questioning manner versus a directive manner? And I found that, generally speaking, all the leaders were growing at different rates. And because there wasn't necessarily a standard way of approaching tasks and a routine to which that was done, we had varied degrees of success throughout the plant and within value streams and within teams. So we were constantly under construction and trying to re-engineer a way of thinking within the culture of the plant. So on a holiday, I picked up Mike's book, Toyota Kata. And for me, the most engaging part of the book, and again, this is my personal experience, was a case study within the book. And the case study basically describes a situation happening within a manufacturing plant and a dialogue between a team member and a team leader where there's a manufacturing defect on the plant floor. And they go through a series of steps through questioning and experimentation, and eventually they end up solving the problem, as you might think in a case study. And probably the most powerful point of that case study, and the thing that intrigued me most about how do I employ or how do I deploy a tool like Toyota Kata in this powerful form, was at the end of the case study you learn that the team member and the lead of that team basically had solved the problem all within one shift. So not only did the book provide some solutions around how you create this routine about continuous improvement thought process, but it also added some speed to the improvement process. So generally, we believe in two methods of Kaizen, one being a step change Kaizen, where you see kind of a beginning, a middle, and an end to it, and sometimes you see those Kaizen events slip back a little bit, where the Kata method or GKN's leadership standard work method of coaching people through the exercises really is about daily continuous improvement. So at a minimum, what can you impact today that will make your work, relationship with the customer, or relationship within your team or amongst your greater team better and make your work life generally better? So the case study was really the thing that triggered me to investigate further. So that brings us to 2012, 2013, leadership standard work, the Kata. Really, we started to really deploy that in 12 and 13. We did some further lean training for those team leaders that we brought on. We trained the site steering committee, and we really were trying. The culture had changed quite a bit to living continuous improvement. Our market was changing because we're a dominant player in the V6 and V8 market for automotive. And with new CAFE standards coming on in the next 5 to 7 years, we needed to establish another pattern for improvement where we could actually produce some product that we had never produced before. And most of that was in the 4-cylinder engine market. GKN adapted a PDCA cycle that included a learning cycle. You can see on this, so that thought process of continually doing PDCA, but learning from that and then connecting the next PDCA cycle to it really ties in well with Mr. Rother's work. So talking specifically about Kata, the use of coaching cycles is really where the routine is established. And within that routine, what happens is there is a set of questions that you ask, and I think the key point there is there's a set of questions, and I'll cover those in a minute. But that really opens up the mind of the coach in this instance to listen to what the learner is saying and really try to analyze the last improvement step that the learner went through. Now, in the coaching cycles, basically we have a rule that no cycle can be longer than 24 hours. So you can see where that's an added benefit of rapid practice along very specific routines, so that there is a very open dialogue between the coach and the learner to understand where the next experiment might happen based on the last experiment. So for me, that is the most important part, because you are actually engaging the brain of the learner in what they think versus, a more traditional demand type of leadership style where you're saying, well, do this next, or why don't you try this next. Really, you're trying to pull it from the learner to think, for them to understand what they want to try next. So they get a great benefit of ownership from that. And generally in some traditional techniques of problem solving or continuous improvement, you may use a Pareto chart, or you may use some command and control, and things aren't as repeatable day out and day over, day on. So generally speaking, when you have the ability to come back in the next 24 hours or sooner than that, you have the ability then for the learner to understand what they did, self-correct their course, and eventually we find that Pareto list, action list, or whatever, the learner will get to it. It just may not be in the order that the coach or the leader wanted it to happen. But this way, the learner is fully engaged in their solution that ends up coming out of these activities. So the 5 coaching questions, there's 5 basic questions, and then there's follow-up questions depending on which step you're on. But generally speaking, the 5 questions are, understand where you want to get to. And that's the basic of any type of problem solving or continuous improvement activities, but it's important to understand where you're trying to get to in a near term. Target condition, and so the question is, what is the target condition? Generally stated, a target condition is anywhere from a week to 6 weeks out, somewhere in that comfort zone for both the coach and the learner. And the target condition that's trying to be achieved really should be leading on to a much bigger goal and a much longer timeline. So you analyze with the next question, where are you actually at now when you ask what's the actual condition? So that really prepares the learner to think, oh, where am I trying to get to and where am I today? And then you ask the third question, what obstacles do you think are preventing you from getting to that target condition? And this is where the engagement in the learner's neurosystem begins, and they have to think about what's stopping me from getting there. And then you eventually ask them which one they'll be working on today, ask the learner what their next step is, and then a huge link is a follow-up. To ask the learner when they think we could follow up on that last step versus setting a timeline for them. So if they think they can accomplish something in the next 30 minutes, you don't have to wait for 24 hours. You don't have to wait you would never wait for 2 weeks using this kind of method. However, if the learner says, well, I will need the full 24 hours, it's really within their power to say when the next coaching session would happen, and I think that creates a level of engagement as well. Now, many times the learner will try to take too large of a step, and they'll say, well, it'll take me 2 or 3 days to do this. Part of the job of the coach there is really to help, eat the elephant one bite at a time and help the learner break it down into a smaller, more simple step that actually could be accomplished in the next 24 hours. And when we talk about the 2 pilot projects that we did in our plant when I first came back from official University of Michigan Kata training, I'll talk a little bit more how that might look. But the follow-up, the engagement of the learner are really, really critical parts to the system created here. So we just spent time on the coaching kata. The improvement kata is slightly different from typical problem-solving methods in the order of how you actually set where you're trying to go. You really do start with a longer-term vision, so you're taking more of a strategic look versus a tactical look. And the numbers on this slide kind of represent how you pattern the improvement project. So what's our long-term vision? Then number 2, what's our current state? The third one is, moving towards a vision, what can we do in the next short amount of time, let's say 2 weeks, and that will become our target condition. And then you come back and say, oh, so what's preventing us from getting to the target condition? Many times people will get caught up in what's stopping us to get to the vision. And really the goal here is just to move continuous improvement along the path in small steps. So the obstacles focus on getting us to the target condition and not necessarily to the vision. However, if we do get to the target condition, we should be moving along that line to get to our vision. So within the Germantown plant, I came back from training at the University of Michigan and was very, very excited to have read the book, understood the case study. My thought process was I could create a full workforce full of people who look for solutions, implement their own solutions, and I really thought, how fast can I really get this going? So I came back from the training, basically assigned 2 learners. I became the coach at that point, and the 2 projects were slightly different, and one was a machining line, and the need there was a customer uplift that we needed to meet in the next, say, 3 months. The line could not hit that new takt time that we needed to meet the customer demand. And additionally, the current condition in the line was they were actually experiencing excess freight because they weren't even meeting the takt time of the current demand. So we'd won an uplift. We're failing basically at the current takt time. We need to do something here. The second pilot project, much the same circumstances, although this was a core process within Sinter Metals. So again, we had a customer uplift, a different customer. We had excess freight. And it really is our highest volume value stream. And how can we make these improvements? Part of the thought process within the leadership team here is how can you make improvements while adding a bunch of capital resources? And is there continuous improvement activities you could drive and help the employees help you solve this solution? So I mentioned before that sometimes within the project the learner will try to take too large of a step. On the machining line pilot project, what actually had to happen was there needed to be some maintenance work done within the machining center. And the maintenance group basically was saying, well, I need to have that machine for 2 weeks. And generally speaking, we were already missing shipments. We had excess freight going on. So giving it, part of the problem with, traditional improvement in that way was, well, if I have to give them for 2 weeks, I have to build a big inventory bank. I'm going to have to work weekends. It's going to cost us a lot of money to give that up for two weeks. So what we asked the maintenance department is, well, if we give it to you for 2 hours a night, how far along the process can you get? And generally speaking, instead of having the machine for 2 weeks, they ended up making all the improvements we needed within 1 week, but in 2-hour increments every night during kind of a shift changeover. So helping the learner and helping even our maintenance department think about improving in a smaller step was really a breakthrough moment in how we apply our leadership standard work in Kata. So those projects were very, very successful. I mean, within 30 days, we had achieved 20% improvement. I had never personally experienced that rate of improvement in that short of time practicing Lean at that point, probably 15 years of my career. And I hope you can understand the excitement as a leader that, wow, if I could do this and we could, with 2 really good value stream leaders, drive this improvement, meet our customer demand, not have to put capital in, the world is our oyster, so to speak, we'll be able to really move this business along in short order. And so with that, as probably any leader would do, I took the coaching hat, had my 2 learners. They continued to do projects, and then I turned the 2 learners into 2 coaches. And additionally, I picked up 2 other learners for myself. And pretty soon we had 8 learners going on, 3 coaches. And you would think, wow, you could just really change this plant in short order. However, what we found was that there is a big need to understand your coaching capacity within your own plant. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the result of trying to go too fast with the process and try to spread it across the plant was that I ended up with confused learners and confused coaches. We ended up not having standards. People ended up changing the questions to suit their needs. The actual improvement kata and that system wasn't followed to a T. The visual management of the system became very confusing. So we had to slow down and go back and understand, well, if it worked with 2 people, how come it didn't work with 8? And the real lessons learned became the fact that, to bring a consistent pattern of improvement, you really needed more mid-level management to coach every day, but we needed to have them practice in a more controlled environment. And so we started practicing that with a second coach, meaning one of the coaches would be watching the coach instead of watching the learner to really understand if they're setting the routine. I didn't explain it very well, but kata generally means routine. And you're trying to establish this routine of practice so that people can go on and master certain skills and a way of thinking. We had to come up with a way to measure our coaching capability. Some people that we thought, oh, this will be a wonderful coaching opportunity for this person, turned out they just weren't very good at the part of coaching that's probably most often missed, and that is listening. So a lot of work and a lot more time than I ever envisioned had to be put into the coaching capability. In order to practice this technique, kata, leaders really must understand the skills and practice the skills before coaching. So personally, I had completed one project as a learner, turned my focus to coaching. I think I would have a personal, better understanding of the process if I had done a few more projects as a learner. So I would encourage everybody to be involved as a learner and a coach. And then the process as a whole, instead of just being guided by myself, we created a steering committee after we kind of went through that confused state. And with the guidance of the steering committee, really can make, again, step-by-step improvements to how we were using the techniques and the tools and how we could apply them to our business. So those were the lessons learned from trying to go too fast. Here's some follow-on projects when we slowed down and really kind of brought it back in, 3 projects we ran. We developed a whole new manufacturing process in 6 weeks. Within those 6 weeks, we actually did 275 improvement cycles. Now, to tell you a little bit more about this process, I mentioned to you that we had a market we had to break into, which is the 4-cylinder market. It's an engine component that we make that's made basically upside down and backwards from the way we're normally used to processing our current product. So we had been working on how to do this for about 3 years and had moved the ball along slowly, but now there was a real need to be able to do this and show some customers how we could produce the products they needed in the time they needed. So basically, selected the right learner, selected the right coach. Then over 6 weeks, they did 275 experiments to move the process along and really created a process from nothing, which was really a huge success. We had another machining opportunity. Again, the customers, the culture even with our customers had changed in the business where we were starting to win more business, and how were we going to do that without making a huge amount of investment? So we improved the machining process again by 60%, and in another value stream, we were able to totally eliminate a process step within 60 days and deliver the products the customers still needed with all the quality requirements and everything. So if you can imagine, if you could eliminate one of your process steps, how that improves your flow along your value stream, reduces your maintenance costs, reduces your labor costs. Really, we had some fantastic results from applying the tools around coaching kata and some improvement kata. So the current state of the plant really is that I was the plant manager until a month ago for 5 years. Our return on sales reached a positive and very acceptable level within our business, really towards the target end of where our businesses are expected to be. Our overall equipment effectiveness has gone improved by, I would say, a good 10 to 15%, and certainly within, again, acceptable levels for our type of business. And our delivery has reached a 99% level. That's where we're operating now. Our customer concerns have gone down to less than 1 a month. We've won new business with 3 key customers. Our employee satisfaction level has gone from the 2.5 it was when we started up to that 3 level that the GKN is targeting. And I'm happy to say that we've had very low fluctuation in staff and management. And we did put a lot of time and effort into getting the right team in place. And any fluctuation that's happened out of the Germantown facility now has been more promotional than a need to move on. So I would wrap up this presentation and give everybody time for questions in a minute, saying that, you know, it has been a lean journey. There's been a team that has learned the techniques of lean. Personally, as a leader, I've had to learn to change my management style, and the Toyota Kata, or GKN's leadership standard work, has really been a huge enhancement as to how we manage the business going forward and engaging people in the way of thinking about making their own work life better, making a better relationship with internal and external customers, and the results have really been outstanding. As a matter of fact, even winning some supplier awards from customers such as GM. Well, there's a few things I would say there. One is that I do believe that you, at the very baseline, you would need to, you know, understand the material within the book. And the improvement kata is very structured within the text. And I didn't go into that detail in this presentation because, again, my focus has been more on the coaching kata. But generally speaking, a value stream would be a good spot to start from, and then looking at maybe your bottlenecks or where you have flow issues or your takt time issues, and then you can break that down more into a cell type situation. So I think any place that you're really looking for improvement and have an idea that where you want to get to, you could apply the improvement kata and coaching kata. My first learners, when I came back from the formal training, really I decided to use my value stream manager. So we were structured in a 2 value stream system within our plant, and I decided that as part of coaching and a part of helping them think in a certain way, that I would start with them. So I selected who I thought were the appropriate people who were having some struggles in running different parts of the business. So we selected one project from each value stream and then had the value stream managers actually become learners in that situation. Another interesting question. Just recently had a discussion with Mike Rother about that, and for non-manufacturing techniques or in daily coaching, I have personally set up a routine with the people that report to me that's generally how we have a dialogue around, you know, where it doesn't matter if it's a personal development for the person or a plant goal or something like that, but we talk about, you know, where are you trying to get to and where you're at now and what are you working on. So it's not as formal anymore as the 5 questions. The 5 questions are asked, but over time of practice for, I guess now, almost 3 years of practicing this, have been able to form the questions so I can use them as a management tool. And then we do use it within our business process improvement activity. If, let's say we're trying to improve our engineering change process or something like that, there needs to be some activity on a daily basis to make sure it's moved forward. So that is much more structured along the 5 questions, but we do use it outside of the manufacturing core. Well, I think that's a great question. I appreciate somebody asking it. Actually, there was absolutely zero resistance from the floor, which was one of the most shocking things. And really the story I would tell you about is that we went to one of our learners we had trained in formal, I believe he had received a green belt certification, went through all of that formal problem solving type activities. and really never embraced it, and really got a lot of pushback from that person on those type of activities. We brought Kata to him, or the thought process of daily continuous improvement to him, and for that person, it was like night and day. It was so much more simple because they got to engage in their thoughts. And in a technique, they could decide what was next versus a Pareto chart or something else. So we have not seen any resistance from the actual shop floor. The part of the plant that I see more resistance coming from is more engineering, and a little bit from the quality departments, because they're a little bit more formal in their problem solving, and they need to be to answer customer solutions. But there's still a good level of engagement, and we have many engineers who are engaged in this. So there's always something to work through. But from the shop floor, absolutely, the people on the floor loved it because they get some of that feedback on a daily basis that they all really are looking for, and they were engaged in solving their own problems. The training is really in the practice, and I think the practice comes around the 5 questions, and in total there's probably more like 9 questions when you get into the material. And the biggest skill that I'm looking for is listening. Somebody that can really open up their mind to what the learner is trying to portray, and maybe having empathy for the learner. Are they struggling with something? Is the learner taking it down a path where it's just tasks versus true experimentation? So that's why it's necessary to practice as a learner first. So that's one prerequisite. And then after that, we are looking for people who have that good skill around listening and being empathetic towards people, and reading body language and things like that. But the number one thing is to practice, and probably if you have very new coaches, making sure they have a solid second coach that is focused on improving them. Well, we haven't totally transitioned. We do have teams that still do very focused week-long Kaizen events. But generally speaking, and those things are necessary if you're bringing a piece of equipment back to zero state, so that you have a great TPS system set up, or autonomous maintenance system, or any of those things. There is a huge place for those type of activities. But generally speaking, the understanding that the people on the floor actually doing the work are the experts, and they're the ones that have the best ideas. So how do we engage them on a daily basis was probably the transition point, the thing that I've been looking for most of my career is how do we engage those people. And one of the identified wastes within GKN is the failure to use the power of the people's ideas on the floor. And this was a technique where we could actually apply that. So I wouldn't say we transitioned away from traditional Kaizen, but this is much more prevalent with us.